to Finn vs. History. As ever, I'm here with Horatio Gould.
Oh, I'm so chilly, I'm going to die.
And today, the unsinkable podcast takes on the Titanic.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
The Edwardian 9/11. I feel a lot of sympathy with this story. The hubris that we had setting up this podcast feels like... Because I watched a bit of the film earlier today, and you know that bit where the guy goes, "But this ship can't sink," and the designer goes, "She's made of iron, sir. She can and she will."
Yeah.
I feel like with us...
What's the version of that for us?
Like, this podcast can't be cancelled. You're doing accents.
Chinese accents.
You're doing Chinese. You can and you will. It's a mathematical certainty.
I'm very much the Bruce Ismay of this podcast. I'm gonna abandon you on the ship. You're gonna go down.
I'm Smith. I'm fully
dressing up as a woman and saying that you sexually harassed me and getting off on one of the lifeboats.
You're dressing Charlie up as a baby and just getting out of here. And I am proudly, I'll be commended by Churchill. Hitler saluting, Nazi saluting from the bow. As we go down, as we've hit the iceberg of Twitter or whatever it is. And I'll be commended for my resilience into going down with the ship.
Yeah, I think the Titanic's very similar to the Jack the Ripper story, as in it's got very annoying loser fans, right?
Probably the worst fans.
Yeah. Ripper and Titanic are up there as the two biggest niche history special interests, because World War II's too big. Do you know what I mean? Is there anything else to compare to Titanic and Jack the Ripper?
I think because they're both mysteries and the whole internet sleuth culture grabs onto them.
Yeah. And
the whole idea of finding the Titanic. Yeah. And no one really knows what, there's a lot of people don't know about it. So that into that void comes the nerds with I brought some,
and that
cavalry.
puts both. I was put on Jack the Ripper and Titanic by that, but studying both these topics, they are actually. Titanic is actually a great topic.
It's a great story
because it's through this you look at so many other things.
Yeah, it's a portal.
You wonder what other time periods would we have a great? You just want another crash or something.
Well, in the way, I mean, because not to bring up 9/11 so quickly again. What's that? 2 minutes?
Well, you already said it in the first 30 seconds. So.
But I'm like playing chess, where every time I mention it, I click the clock.
But to be fair, this is actually this is
this basically is 9/11 for the Edwardians.
Yeah.
But there's been, in the way that there's been a great film, a kind of epochal film, which you'd say it's actually. I watched a bit of it back. It's very bad for the first half. The dialogue is really bad.
Yeah, but it's an amazing feat.
But it's an amazing film.
Yeah. Because it was kind of like a girls' film, sort of. It was
the first half is it's a trans film,
but it's a fucking
because the first half is for girls, and then when they hit the iceberg, it's an action film for the boys.
Right. So
I watched it it's a hermaphrodite film. I watched it in the cinema, age 7.
What
and
the bloody hell is
I was next to my cousin, and when Rose does the hand, my
female cousin,
male cousin, who's a bit older than me, goes, "They're having sex," and I'm like, "What the fuck's that?"
What we do at Christmas.
What do you mean? What do you mean having sex?
You told me that was a handshake.
Yeah.
Knock.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beginning of the long trail of abuse that leads to this podcast. But I'm thinking about why hasn't there been a 9/11 film where they hang it on a love story,
right?
Of people that were going into the towers that day.
Or you could do a 9/11 film where there's a love story and someone has an ex, their wife's in the tower.
Their ex is in it, and they're like, "Oh, thank fuck she's gone." Yeah, a divorce story. Beautiful, beautiful ending.
Well, it's more, how on earth are we going to tell your sister that we've been sleeping behind her back? Oh, she just done that.
Oh, that's that done. It's more of a short film. Or you have a film where the current girlfriend, the victim of the cheating, is in the first tower.
Yeah.
And then the new one's in the second tower. And so
he's like, thank God.
Thank God for that.
No!
And he has to sprint to get his new love out of whatever the second tower was.
Type in Charlie Sheen 9/11 film. All right, so I need to actually watch this.
What? There's a Charlie Sheen 9/11 film?
It all takes place in an elevator. It looks like the cheapest film ever. I mean, there's not great 9/11 cinema, and there should be.
It's the most cinematic thing that's ever happened. So the whole, where were you? I was in a lift.
It's kind of like, how can you make the cheapest 9/11 film? You just play the actual footage and then have them in one studio. It's like we could do a 9/11 film in this studio.
That's like us making a Titanic film in the bath. with like a home, or just on an iPhone or something. So the Titanic is, I imagine this will be quite a 2 or 3 part series.
Yep,
and again, from us, it's a big topic.
Big ship.
The fattest ship ever built.
That's what my researchers told me.
It's a big ship.
Yeah.
And built
back when a cruise was classy.
This is the beginning of the cruise. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Do you know what I mean? Because now a cruise is the trashiest thing you could do.
Yes.
Right? Going on holiday, but you just stay on a boat and it's just sort of like a moving I'd say hotel prison.
I'd say the classiest thing to do on a cruise is to sink and go down with the ship. That's what an esteemed gentleman does.
Yeah, when you come into dock, that's when.
That's trashy.
Yeah, because I was also thinking who I'd be in this story, and I realised I'd probably be on the other side. I'd be shouting coward at the people who survived. I'd be in there, cowards! You're all cowards!
I'd be there with the gun. I'd be pushing women and children off the fuck, get off! I would misinterpret women and children first as throw them overboard. And get the blokes in the boats.
Yeah, that would be great. Men first.
Women and children first. Right.
Women and children last.
So the Titanic sunk. Not to ruin the ending.
I was genuinely worried that Charlie didn't know.
I've ruined the ending for Charlie there. He had no idea. The Titanic sunk in 1912.
Yeah.
So this is
Edwardian.
To place this for the dum-dums. This is after the birth of Hitler. Hitler is alive.
He has been born.
For the first time in this podcast, we are dealing with something where Hitler has been born.
Yeah.
Hitler's born in 1889, so Hitler hears about the Titanic. Fascinating.
Yeah.
However, it is before Elvis did the comeback special.
Right. Okay, that's a good way of placing it.
No leather suit.
So how's Hitler reacted to hearing about the Titanic?
He's gone. The Titanic sunk.
What price were the billionaires? 9.
And I get on board. Yeah. Because, I mean, part of the story of the building of the Titanic is that the Germans also had a big cruise industry.
Yes.
So I guess we should probably start by talking about the cruising. And as you say, it was...
Or is it cruising something else?
Well, I don't know.
Is it cruising like a gay thing?
Yeah, so is everyone on board the Titanic a gay guy? Is that what's happened?
Charlie, do you know what cruising is? You know someone who cruises.
Is that why they were letting the women and children off first so they could all just stay off and suck each other off?
Cruising, type in cruising, gay term.
So the Titanic is the gayest ship that's ever been built.
Cruising is a slang term for searching for a sexual partner in public. It's a gay term that originated in the 1960s.
Okay, so yes, so this is the Titanic is before this becomes a thing. Okay, right. So the whole idea of going down with your ship is something different now.
It's going down.
It's going down on a sailor. This is before that happened. So in the Edwardian period, these big liners, these big fat ships, they're like they're the cutting edge of technology at the time. They're
they're like AI companies now? It'd be like OpenAI, ChatGPT,
like
DeepSeek.
If the Titanic happened now in today's context, it would be a massive Tesla full of billionaires crashing into a fatberg.
Right, a fatberg?
Yeah.
What's a fatberg?
You know what a fatberg is?
No.
It's the collection of grease and fat and sewers.
Right. I have no idea.
A fatberg is a solid mass of waste.
I thought that was a slur for an overweight Jewish person.
Yeah, it's Jonah Hill. Seth Rogen is a fatberg. Hey, a fucking fatberg! I'm walking here. A fatberg is a solid mass of waste that forms in sewers from non-biodegradable items, fat,
oil and grease. Wow.
So it's like cooking oil. I mean, to be honest, we don't 100% know for sure that the Titanic hit an iceberg. It could have hit a fatberg that drifted off the coast of America.
Yeah, Jonah Hill breaks off from America and slowly drifts.
A huge fat Jewish man breaks off from the North American continent. And there's a whole field of them just floating. With their bellies up. And the Titanic sees one too late. And 2,000 souls are condemned. So, no, cruises is like... so the Titanic is built by... Well, it's operated by the White Star Line.
Yes. Which is a big symbol of British industrial power, I guess, at this point. It's the top end. Yeah, it's like the country on top having a big tech company.
Yes, although it has been bought by an American conglomerate.
Only just recently, and it's that kind of shift from British power to American power. Because we're coming right to the end of the kind of
I'd say
peak of the British Empire.
This is, the sinking of the Titanic is the kind of is the start of the end of the empire.
Yes. Because World War One happens in two years after this, and that's when it properly ends. But it's also the Edwardian era. It's the Belle Epoque in France. It's kind of like the golden age. What's looked back nostalgically as the golden age of Europe culturally, right?
Yeah.
Because there was relative peace. It's arts flourishing. The Edwardians are quite different to the Victorians as well. Victorians are very stoic, moralizing. You know, they're putting dresses on chair legs because it was too much like a woman's leg. Do you know about that?
No.
Yeah, because it was too horny.
Chairs have got burkas.
Yeah,
Putting burkas on chairs.
Because it's too like uncouth to have a chair leg because it looks too much like a naked woman's leg.
A man would see a chair leg and be like, "Oh, don't tempt me. I'm going to shove that up my arse if you don't cover it up." Is that what that meant?
That period ended, and now it's the Edwardians, which is a kind of I guess it's a more leisurely period of the British Empire. It's kind of like
but there's still a huge
softened.
Still a huge element of that stiff upper lip.
Yes,
the Victorian. It's
definitely, but they're having more fun with it. Right,
I see.
Right. They're drinking more. I don't know. This is the era of Jeeves and Wooster, right?
Yes, P.G. Wodehouse.
That's sort of a satire of Edwardian England, right?
Yeah, so it's like Benny Hill. They're chasing big boobed women around. It's slightly more camp, I guess. It's camp Victorians, the Edwardians.
And then America is now properly starting to. It's like China is now, I guess.
Yeah,
but
America's the coming power.
Yeah,
and Britain is sort of clinging on to its imperial might.
And I guess the richest people in the world are still Americans. Like the real titans of industry are still, because it's like Carnegie, the Vanderbilts, JP Morgan, who's the richest man in the world.
Yes.
So like a lot of the individuals are still American. Well, are now American.
Guggenheim, he's yeah.
It's kind of what's it? Is it Gilded Age America?
Gilded Age of New York is going on. So this is after the gold rush and basically America's becoming the capitalist power.
And then JP Morgan buys the White Star Alliance company.
No, hang on. Star Alliance is an aircraft carrier. White Line.
Yes.
A bit White Star.
So JP Morgan buys White Star.
Yeah.
And it's seen in Britain as a great failure because you're selling, it's like when we sold Rolls Royce, I guess.
Yeah, or like Jaguar.
Yes, exactly. So they're seeing, but then America are seeing it as a
Cadbury's is now made by the Chinese or something.
But they're seeing it as a big loss in America because of how much money JP Morgan paid so over the odds for it.
Yeah.
Basically bought them out.
Because he's trying to build a monopoly of big fat ships. And
the Atlantic, the White Star ships were originally built to go to Australia, which was a big route that was happening, obviously. That's what was these massive ocean liners.
For filthy criminals.
For filthy criminals to go to Australia. And then I don't know how he hadn't thought of it, but someone just said, well, why don't you go to America? It's way shorter and you will make way more money.
Yeah.
And it's more of a relevant trade route now. So this kind of transatlantic voyage had only just started to properly explode with like big ocean liners. And
basically the White Star Line, the British company, has a rival. There's the whole German cruising industry. Yeah. Hello. Hiya. Which is a very big deal still to this day. German cruises.
Yeah, in Berlin, there's a lot of German cruising. You
go down Hamburg and the port there, mucky place. There's a whole German. I think it's called the Nord America, something like that. All their ships are called the SS, which I feel is slightly on the nose.
Well, they didn't know it was on the nose then, right?
I think they knew. I think give him some credit. Hitler's around, remember. Hitler is around. He's alive. He's taking all this stuff in. He's germinating on it.
Yeah.
But also the Cunard Line is the sort of main rival ocean liner. Mm-hmm. Basically, this is kind of the Titanic's being built is a result of this rivalry that White Star and Cunard have to build the biggest, fattest, fastest ship. Mm-hmm. And Cunard have been setting speed records for ships. And they can go at like 25 knots. Now, whenever I hear knots, I'm like, I don't actually know how fast that is. Yeah. I mean, Charlie, how fast is that in like on land? Is it like a jet ski? Or is it like a...
I literally have no idea.
I've got no idea.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a cruise?
No. Have you?
Of course not. I went to private school. Wouldn't be seen dead on a cruise. Or I would, which is the only classy way to take a cruise is to die. 30 knots is about 55 kilometres. What's that in miles per hour? This is a British podcast, Charlie. Miles per hour. Okay, so it's basically a little bit less than miles.
Fine.
Right. So the Titanic's top speed is 22 knots, which basically means it could sail past a school between the hours of 4 and 5. So it's not actually speed. It's not that fast at all.
Okay, right.
It's really quite slow. Children could be playing in the water, and the Titanic could just plough through them.
But I guess if it's a hotel moving at that pace, that's quite fast.
It's fast for a hotel. I'll give you that. It's fast for a hotel.
A 10-story resort hotel. That's quick.
To be fair, there are no road regulations on how fast hotels can drive past schools. So actually, it's not going that fast.
Charlie,
at all.
Did the Titanic hit any fish?
Well, we don't know. There's so much about this. We don't know how many fish did the Titanic kill on its maiden voyage.
The real victims. They're not.
They counted amongst the dead.
You know those people who talk about the animals that are killed in World War II, and there's a separate memorial day.
The horses,
the fish who died. At
where's the memorial for the fish the Titanic hit on its way?
Anyway.
So
where are we at?
The Titanic is slow as fuck.
Yeah.
It's big. But the whole point is that the Cunard is we're going really fast. You get on our ships and we go to New York in, 3-4 days.
Yeah.
Titanic's going, well, we're slower, but we're bigger and we're going for luxury.
Yes.
So the results.
It's like a White Lotus boat.
Yeah,
sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the White Lotus should do a series on the Titanic.
Yeah.
That would be great. With Jennifer Coolidge on the Titanic. So, this comes out of a meeting in 1907 between J.P. Morgan and then Ismay. Now, is it Bruce Ismay or is it his son?
It's probably his dad.
So, but I think Bruce Ismay's dad starts White Star.
Yes, he starts it, and he comes from nothing, and he is sort of viewed within kind of British social circles as kind of trashy new money, right? And then he sends his kid, Bruce Ismay, to top boarding schools. The big thing that he wants is to have his son be a gentleman, right? Yeah. And what's interesting is that Americans view Bruce Ismay as this kind of posh English guy who inherited everything and didn't deserve anything. And the Brits see Bruce Ismay as this kind of, bolshy upstart trash.
White trash. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of like the two different ideals at this point, and kind of it really sums up the difference.
But both culture. Absolutely detest him for surviving.
Yeah.
Right. So Bruce Ismay sits down for dinner with J.P. Morgan, some other cunt, and they basically come up with this idea of a new fleet of transatlantic cruises. They'll be the biggest ships ever. They'll be basically, this is the first time that someone's really gone, let's make a really nice hotel and put it on the sea. And so out of this meeting, they decide to build 3 ships. The Olympic. Now the Titanic, which obviously after it crashes gets renamed the Paralympic. And the Britannic. And they're all fucking massive. They're all really big, but I think the Titanic is maybe 3 inches bigger than the next one.
They keep adding just a little bit more, so it breaks the record. But fundamentally, no one's going to talk about the Olympic, but it's probably almost exactly the same, right?
I think it is, But I do think maybe the Titanic was the only one that had a swimming pool and a Turkish spa.
It was next level.
Yeah. So they really go after this whole luxury thing. And they sign a deal with, they have a deal with is it Harland and Wolff?
Harland Wolff shipyard in Belfast, which I think is the biggest shipyard in the world.
Is it?
Yeah, at this point. And Belfast at this point is in one of the true industrial centres of the entire world.
I'll build your fucking ship.
I'll build your...
Give it here, I'll build it.
Protestant, as we talked about in the Troubles episode, some of the most hard-nosed...
One can only imagine what would have happened had the Catholics built this ship. It wouldn't even have made it out of Southampton. It would have sunk because it would have been filled with party boys. Yeah. They would have built it out of fucking spaghetti or something. The Protestants have the whole image of it as unsinkable comes from this hard-nosed Belfast fuckers.
But it's also when you go to Belfast, it does feel distinctly different to Irish cities because it was such a industrial British. That's why it feels like. I don't know, Sheffield or one of the British, because it was. But
also the Titanic
blew up in the Industrial Revolution, and it was built on an industry where it was world leading. But
it's quite funny how fucked the history of Belfast is. That their main thing now is come look at where that horrible ship that sank's built.
Well, if you get bored of that, get a taxi cab to see where people used to get stabbed,
get gunned down. But I've stayed in the Titanic Hotel, which is where the White Star offices used to be.
Right.
So, and it's like they have all the drawing rooms.
Oh, nice. Is it good? Good stuff?
Lovely hotel. Yeah. Shout out to the Titanic Hotel in Belfast. The unsinkable hotel. That hotel will not sink. It's built on land. That's crucial to why it won't sink. Yeah. But it's just by the shipyard.
I'd like to do an unsinkable shit in the Titanic Hotel and then call the reception.
I assure you, this shit can't sink. She's made of shit, sir. She can and she will. And then he just flushes it and it goes. They must have had some unsinkable shits in that hotel.
Well, there's also someone who couldn't flush the toilet and must have been relieved that the whole shit was sinking.
They must have a fatberg problem. Because they get a lot of big tourists down there, a lot of big fat Americans waddling around looking at the shipyard. They have these two cranes. Charlie, can you find out what they're called? They're these two. A taxi driver told me.
But this is before Fat America. Is this? America hasn't started getting fat yet. Because they're eating tallow fat, not seed oils.
No, Americans are fat. If there were more Americans on the ship, it wouldn't have sunk. Yeah. Americans are pretty big at this point, I think. Like we say, that we don't know if the Titanic hit a fatberg that drifted them off the New York sewers. We don't know. There are these two massive cranes in the Belfast. Samson and Goliath. That's what they're called.
Wow.
And they're at the Holland and Wolff shipyard, and they are the most famous gantry cranes in the world.
I mean, you got to do your tourism with what you've got, don't you?
Yeah, and they really do. They know what works, because as we say, the rest of the tourism is you don't want to know about where all these people were gunned down. Yeah. But they're completed in 1969, so they're actually completely irrelevant to the story.
So they bring a lot of crane tourists go to Belfast.
Yeah. So it's the
crane tourist industry is really.
It's actually a real crossroads for autistic and neurotypical people to go and learn about history.
What's the neurotypical attraction?
They're learning about the Troubles.
Yeah. Well, Dan Rath, that great comedian, has a joke where he realised that he might be autistic because when he heard about the Titanic, he was more upset about the ship being destroyed. Same with the Berlin Wall. Yeah. He just hates good infrastructure being destroyed.
We need to get him on, actually, this podcast. But there are people who marry walls, aren't there? Those women that marry walls and like ships.
Yeah.
I wonder, but someone might have married the Titanic.
Maybe exactly. We never hear about the Titanic's wife, you know.
There's so many victims we don't know. The fish. the crazy
unsinkable shits in the toilet.
The unsinkable shits in the White Star toilets.
But with the Harland
some of the shits may have actually survived. When the ship went down, there might have been people doing
on a door.
On a door, there's a guy being, I may not live, but this shit will. The shit that I'm taking on this door in the Atlantic Sea.
Harland Wolff, apparently every work day was like an army going to war. It was 40,000 people would descend into the dockyards. And they said that you wouldn't have to set your alarm because the sounds of
marching.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I heard on a podcast, but I'm like, but if you hear everyone go to work, you're already late. So the whole point was you do need to set an alarm. Yeah. You wouldn't. They said you wouldn't have to set an alarm because you'd hear everyone go to work. Well, if you hear them, then you're late.
Yeah, you need an alarm, mate.
Oh fuck!
So I think in 1908 they signed the money and off on building it, and I think it costs £3 million, which in today's money is about 180 million pounds. So it's a lot of dosh to build.
I guess sort of like billionaires going to space is maybe a better.
Yeah,
it's kind
I
of
guess
like
so.
Bezos and Musk sending rockets up. That's
so,
kind of a bit more.
I guess it's equivalent to the first commercial space flight done by Musk.
Yes,
and him and like some of the other billionaires are in it.
SpaceX Blue Orbit,
and then there's like a bottom rung where there's just loads of Irish fuckers, immigrants.
Yeah, because as the rest of history said, what people don't realize about the Titanic is it was fundamentally an immigrant ship that you know. Yeah, it was carrying a lot of people. It's like
the baseline of it is people looking for a new life, and then it's
lots of Irish third class immigrants locked in the bottom of a
Well, it wouldn't be Irish nowadays.
SpaceX.
It'd be like Indian. I don't know. It'd be like a lot of Indian guys in the bottom of the rocket.
Yeah.
Please let us out. We're not rats. And they'd lock the door. Well, I don't know how a spacecraft would sink in the way that the Titanic did.
I mean, just it's kind of like being at sea. There's a lot of parallels to being at space and being at sea. It's
the other thing is that now we know that the Titanic was moving so slowly that it could drive past a school between 3 and 5. The idea of crashing into an iceberg doesn't really seem that dramatic now.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that because it was actually just it was such bad luck how everything went wrong that could have gone wrong.
Yeah.
It should have really been unsinkable.
Well, so we should talk about the construction itself.
But sorry, just on the spaceships again, because remember there was a lot of discourse when Bezos was launching his rocket and Elon, that there was this sort of like phallic thing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It was kind of like a masculine thing where it's the shape of the rocket's like a cock, and how like it's so masculine, the phallic shape. And it did kind of annoy me a little bit when it's like you need to shape, they're like shaped that way for a reason. It's like a engineering thing. And there's sometimes like an implication that they make it look like a cock to make them seem like they've got a big cock.
Yeah, and it's like if you built
like
it
skyscrapers are phallic. It's like, well, I don't want to build a vagina skyscraper.
Yeah, it's like if you had a pair of tits flying into space, it wouldn't get up there. But that's why phalluses are designed that way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's to
I think sometimes it's like seen as this kind of like patriarchal thing. It's like, no, it just moves.
Yeah, that's how it flies.
A cock is meant to go through the air.
Yeah. Yeah. A cock is built that way to go into things at speed.
Yeah.
Fastest is the best.
We never say like whenever you see like a cave or a bin.
Oh, what a feminist!
Oh, the matriarchy.
What a feminist statement! Why are bins shaped like fannies? What a feminist statement! Why can't you just throw something in a bin without it being a
Why
fucking?
Can't we make some cock shapes?
Yeah. Why is it fucking throwing something away? It's only a metaphor for how you treat a woman.
To be fair, interestingly, you probably could hit a fatberg in space.
You could hit.
Wouldn't hit an iceberg, but you could hit a fatberg.
In space, fatbergs can hear you.
Because if you sent a fatberg either Jonah Hill or a combination of oil, grease, and butter, that would exist.
Which are interchangeable. Have you seen there's a new film out? Who's the lead actor? It's a combination of oil, grease, and butter.
Oh, Jonah! It's good to see he's got back off after the cancellation.
Oh, is it a comedy? Is it? Is it? Does he get? Is there a love interest?
Right.
So anyway, so we should talk about the actual construction of the ship. So it is. I think
stats.
it's like I believe it's like nearly 900 feet long.
Yep.
They would have been more precise. Although what's funny about it, I was reading about this. They have the designer who's called Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
Who's the guy who says in the film, I assure you, she's made of iron, so she can and she will. But they have a guy who before him who sketches out a concept. And then there's a guy who actually designs it. So I like the idea of being like, well, it's a fucking massive boat. There you go. Big boat. It floats somehow. I don't know how. You design it.
Well, it's sort of our relationship with our camera guy, Pete, really.
Yes,
on
exactly.
this show. He's very much... And that's what we've now got ourselves into quite a fun position where we just go, so I want a massive cock on his head, and then people have to go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're not actually making these
I don't know how this works. I mean, I'm
getting crayons and go.
Yeah, well, so this guy just goes, right, so we're going to build a really big ship. Right, I'll do the concept, big boat, just a little thing, and with sails.
And he's getting paid more as well.
No? So we're doing sails, no sails, all right. Somehow it floats. I mean, when it gets said that it's like, it's unsinkable, I'm like, I don't fucking buy that for a second. Have you seen how big it is? It's fucking massive.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it floats.
Yeah. I don't know how any.
How the fuck does it float? How the fuck? It's a fucking miracle it got to Newfoundland or whatever it did.
Yeah.
Given in mind that it's however many tons of fucking... Anyway.
So can we go back on the specs that you had, Charlie? Let's just run through some juice for the nerds. So
it's 882.5 feet long.
Right.
It's 92.5 feet wide. It
could carry 735 first class passengers, 674 second class passengers, and 1,026 third class passengers.
Now, is that because they all weigh different amounts?
Because the fat ones are
the fat ones are first class.
Well, second class actually is probably
so they can't. The ship cannot stand more than 674 second class.
Lower middle class kind of suburban
fat
people.
Fuckers. Yeah.
The Titanic had a crew of 885. The Titanic had 16 watertight compartments that could be sealed from the bridge. It also had a double hull made of 1-inch thick steel
now,
plates.
This is a thing.
You enjoying this, lads, boys?
This is a thing. All women have now turned off the podcast. Somehow they stayed for that thing where we called all their fannies bins. But they're turning off now, us reading out the specs of the Titanic. This is something that always, in all the research I've done for this, there's something that comes up a lot is this thing about watertight compartments and bulkheads.
Yes, bulkheads.
Right, so
I hear that a
basically,
lot.
if you get, Charlie, can you get a cross section of the Titanic?
I've met a lot of bulkheads in my life.
Well, you're a bulkhead.
I'm a bulkhead. You know, I was lucky because if I was there, they would have press ganged me onto the Titanic to stop the war.
You would have been standing in between compartments.
They go into Portsmouth at night and a group of them go look for the biggest heads they can find.
Yeah, so it goes Easter Island head, bulkheads, dwarves, and then me, who've got tiny heads. So the whole point why it's supposedly unsinkable is that you have all these compartments in the bottom.
Yes.
And they have these thing called bulkheads, which are basically like walls with sealable doors.
Yeah, so it delays the water.
It goes all the way to, I think it's E deck.
You're right.
And so the idea is that some water can get in, and if the first 4 compartments are flooded, it will still be able to float and sort of drift indefinitely, because the water will go over the top of the bulkheads and it'll be like an ice cube tray. And it will spread the weight evenly. My point is this. Now, what actually happens at the 5th compartment is filled, and that's why it was doomed ultimately.
Right.
My point is, if 4 compartments are full and you're a ship in the sea, right? Surely your compartments would have to have as much space in them as the sea has sea, because sea's coming in to the compartments.
Right.
So if one is full and there's more sea than there is compartments, then the sea's just going to come into all of them. So why do they say like, we can have 4 compartments?
I read it because also we're both as thick as each other on this, but how I interpreted it was that it was expected that when you're gonna crash into something, you go head on. Yeah. Right. So the bulkheads, it's sort of a delay, and you can seal off bits, so you can have one bit filled with water, but it doesn't go into the. Because if I puncture right at the front of the boat, you can seal that all off. The reason why the Titanic got fucked, it was so unlucky, is they turned at the last minute to avoid the iceberg,
and it scrapes.
It was cut open like a can opener. Right. This went across one long thing across the entire side, so the bulkheads didn't really do anything. Because it's going in through the side. Right,
I see, okay. Because, I heard that apparently if they had hit the iceberg head on, it would have carried on going. It would have crushed the bow, which would have killed about 80 firemen. But, fucking who cares at that point? And it would have just carried on, and no one really would have budged. None of the people who meant anything on this ship would have noticed.
Tragedy.
So... the ship's design it's like the most, it's the best thing that's ever been built by a human by this point.
And there's never been a boat like it since. Like no one, I guess because of what happened, and also because ships don't mean much anymore because of flight.
Yes.
So no one really.
But no one's tried to build a plane like this.
No.
Like a plane that can have 3,000 people on it.
I guess you have like private. Yeah, you wouldn't have you have private jets and stuff. Is kind of the close to get to like luxury air travel.
So let's go through some of the facilities it's got on board. It's got a swimming pool, it's got Turkish baths. Yes, please, my friend, please come in. Please, very good price, very good ship.
Squash courts.
One sink, 100% one sink. The Turks do build it, I think. That's part of the issue. It's got a squash court.
And James Cameron's a huge Titanic head, the guy who directed the Titanic, and he's part of the Titanic community, which is loads of rich white guys who are fascinated by
supposedly he only does films to make money, so he can spend that money on deep sea diving. Yeah, he's obsessed by deep sea diving. Yeah, so
he's one of the nosiest guys around.
If there's something on the seabed, he's going to find it. Yeah, and have a look at it.
With James, it's like you got to just stop looking down there. Just don't leave
some
it.
rocks left unturned.
He hates a rock left unturned.
He's turning over every rock he sees. We should go talk about the lifeboats.
Yep.
So
the Titanic had 16 lifeboats, which could carry 1,178 people. Now, the interesting thing about the Titanic is it actually
had 20 lifeboats, but it had 16 that were like on the side.
Yeah.
But it had like 4 that were like collapsible.
Right. Flat pack
lifeboats. Yeah.
Titanic was probably the safest ship in the world, is what people were
before it set off. Yes.
Before it.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That was what the interesting thing is, that because of the people often blame the Titanic as this kind of great hubristic thing, but it was more because there'd never been a sinking like this. It was the regulations at the time. They could have even had less lifeboats and been able to set off.
I think they should have had less.
And
lifeboats.
It was.
Well, no, because the idea of the lifeboats was that it was meant to ferry people from the stricken ship to ships that were nearby, because the Atlantic sea lanes, it's not like it's in the middle of fucking nowhere. There's ships like on a schedule. It's like how there are always planes going the same routes. They're like 3 minutes after each other. Yeah. So obviously it's all very slow because they're all massive and they're all driving past schools or whatever. Yeah. So there are the idea is that you just they're like relay racing passengers to a new ship. Again, we'll get to part of the unluckiness, but there's, I guess because all the ships see the fatbergs and like, I don't want to go near there.
But but it's also because it was at like 5 a.m. And people had turned off their communication machines. The nearest ship had turned off literally 30 minutes before. Yeah. It was the imperfect storm, I guess.
In terms of what else the Titanic has got, it's got a lovely promenade.
Yep.
People are moving art collections on it. It's got fine art. It's got like an original fucking book from the 16th century.
I think one of Shakespeare First Folio is lost on there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There's cars in the bottom deck.
Yeah.
People are fucking in the cars.
There's Henry Astor, who's one of the richest men in the world. He dies.
And like first class is sick.
Yeah.
First class is fucking great.
Unreal.
And it costs the equivalent of like 140 grand in today's money for a one-way ticket, bear in mind.
Yeah.
So this is the quality of people in first class.
Yeah.
Second class is like...
Second class don't appear in the Titanic film. Maybe it's because it's not as cinematically interesting.
No,
what you want is the upstairs, downstairs. What you want is the really rich or the kind of like the poor.
Yeah.
The second class is kind of boring because these guys are like civil servants. Everything looks like your local kind of like like a train station cafe is sort of what I imagine second class looks like an old school railway cafe.
Yeah.
Everyone's got tea and biscuits. That's kind of it. And also apparently second class were percentage-wise, the people who died the most, because they were the most like, well, I don't want to make a fuss. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There was the most English kind of
But first class was sort of billionaires and plutocrats in equivalent. Second class was like, as you say, civil servants. Third class was mainly immigrants. But even third class, the luxury in third class is still great.
Well, that's one of the misconceptions as well is that it was kind of like this. Obviously, it was rigidly class structured, but this was the best time of their lives, apparently.
Yeah.
They were having an absolute ball.
They died doing what they loved. Just having a big Irish jig.
And that in the film is actually quite accurate. They were just down there having an absolute blast.
Gambling. Just one massive Jewish wedding down there. With the chairs. And like, so this is an example of the food. First class breakfast.
Well, Quaker Oats. I mean, this is not...
Quaker Oats. No, hang on. Baked apples, Quaker Oats, haddock, grilled mutton, fresh herrings, boiled hominy. What's hominy? Kidneys and bacon, smoked salmon.
But this is also... Now you can imagine that on ships because of refrigeration, but this is right at the cutting edge of that stuff. Refrigeration's only just come in.
Right.
So the idea of eating fresh fish in the Atlantic...
Well, we don't know if the Titanic was killing fish by ploughing through them.
Well, that's what
and
Charlie
then just sucking them up and feeding people kind of like chum. Oh, here we go. Second class breakfast, rolled oats, fruit, fresh fish. What's a Yarmouth bloater?
I've met a couple of Yarmouth bloaters.
This is my wife's family. She's descended from a Yarmouth bloater. It's a type of smoked herring associated with Great Yarmouth.
God,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is the third class breakfast. Just
ham and eggs.
Porridge, ham and eggs, fresh bread, butter. But marmalade, you're getting marmalade. Now, marmalade's a big thing. Marmalade for these Argos is they're blowing their heads. I think second class was the fit ones and third class was the Argos.
Right, okay.
In terms of like, because obviously for comedians, getting booked to do a cruise is a sort of sign that you've essentially given up in any artistic endeavour at all. Mm-hmm. They pay quite well, but you have to...
Have you ever been asked to do a cruise?
No.
Funny
that. You have to work clean. You can't say anything too provocative.
Right, yeah.
So I imagine, like, what's the entertainment? Have they got like an absolute hack doing stand-up?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously all the violinists, game music.
Oh, they had a band, of course.
Games.
Shuffleboard, chess, backgammon.
It does seem sick. Like, I would actually love to be on the Titanic.
First class passengers could play squash.
Yes.
The Argos and third couldn't.
Yeah. But there was also they were
Turkish baths, electric baths, steam room, lovely. Sort of like a floating spa.
Yeah. I think third class were locked in not because they were Argos, but because of...
There's American immigration were like, we can't have the ugliness spreading to the other people.
Because of disease and all that sort of
stuff. We're trying to build a nation of, they were fighting a losing battle with how fat they were. We've got fatbergs drifting off into the North American Sea. But we can't have...
Because there was literally like jail bars locking people into the hull.
But that was the spread of disease.
But does that mean they never came up on deck?
No, it was at night.
Right, but what about during the day? Wouldn't the disease
you're
spread?
Outside, I think. It's like COVID.
What? It doesn't spread during the day.
No, it's in interior, spreading germs inside.
Right, so you're locked in. Yeah, so they'd have their own decks, maybe, probably.
According to most accounts, the worst job on the Titanic was likely that of a trimmer in the engine room, as they worked in the coal bunkers located on top of the boilers, dealing with extremely hot conditions.
Yeah, it's like hell on earth.
Yeah, we should talk about the actual powering, because the crew,
Yeah.
they were mostly from Southampton.
Yeah.
So, of course, the sinking of the ship has a huge impact on Southampton, the city, because I think about 600 people of the crew lived in Southampton. So
right.
disproportionately, Southampton's affected by the sinking.
Yeah.
However, if there is a silver lining to this, it's that Southampton also has the highest proportion of paedophiles in the country.
Does it?
So statistically, quite a lot of pedos went down with the ship.
So it's sort of like, it's like an Operation Newtree.
Yes, it's a massive sting operation. Can we sink that floating?
So the big cities involved in the Titanic were Belfast, Southampton for the crew,
Liverpool,
and Liverpool because
it was registered at Liverpool,
right? And that was the only thing that the Liverpool did for it, because that's the last thing you see as the boat went down in the film.
Is the
on the
name
back
Liverpool?
It says Liverpool.
They'll attach their name to any tragedy, won't they?
Best city in the world.
Yeah. That's our ship, mate. That's our.
No, it's not our. Actually, it's not ours.
Go on, lad. That's our ship, mate. That's my. That's my ma there. That's my ma on that ship.
Yeah.
They'll say. I mean,
if the Scouts were designing it, it would look like an Air Max trainer, I imagine.
Yeah, it'd be a sick whip. Look at that new whip, lad. So the first class passengers are plutocrats. Second class are civil servants. Honest, God-fearing men, just trying to go about their lives. The third class are basically smelly, ugly immigrants from countries like Ireland, Scandinavia, Central Eastern European Europe, the Levant, so Syria, China. There are Chinese on the Titanic.
There's one black guy on the Titanic. Can you talk about the one black guy on the Titanic?
He's called Token, I think. He's from. There's a guy that's going.
Joseph Laroche, right? So he was Haitian, and he was. I think he was related to the.
How did he sound?
Like this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Haitian.
I couldn't possibly comment. So I think he probably sounded like this.
Ear man.
Right. Yeah. Just.
My name is Joseph Laroche.
You've got an Uzi in one hand. You're not even looking.
It's the Unsinkable podcast.
Just firing out a window.
This podcast cannot sink. Here, man. My name Joseph Laroche. Me going on big batty ship.
Right. Quite a moving story, actually, about Joseph Laroche. It's quite a historic figure if you think about it, Laroche.
He smashes a bottle of tonic wine on the front of the ship.
Yeah.
Look at them propellers.
Crazy. Just fucking crazy.
I don't even know where Haiti is. It's vaguely Caribbean, isn't it?
Just close your eyes and point on a map.
Sorry, go on.
I mean, Haiti's probably the most fucked country in the world right now.
Yeah, man. Don't be spitting on truth about Haiti.
Do you know what's going on in Haiti at the moment?
I know there's a guy called Papa Doc who we need to do at some point. The Haitian dictator.
Yes.
Anyway, sorry. Earthquakes, is it?
No, well, it's basically just like the most failed state at the moment.
No,
like
Somalia, surely.
No, I think Haiti's worse because it's it's all gang warfare at the moment.
Surely Somalia's more failed. Somalia's like the goat of failed states.
I don't think so. I think Haiti might actually be, if we're going to rank them.
We should do Black Hawk Down at some point. Sorry.
Yeah.
Love that.
But Joseph Laroche, basically, he was the nephew of the president of Haiti, and he'd come to. He'd been like very well educated. And I think he was going to America because he was trying to avoid racism in France.
He put his pregnant French wife and their 2 daughters onto a lifeboat. They survived. He did not. What do you reckon he said as he went down?
He said, good night, darling.
Blood glad. Pussy glad.
Or he said pussy clot to his wife. Right.
What, like that? You think he said it like that, did he?
Pussy clot. Pussy clot, my love.
As he puts through the lifeboat, pussy clot. Meant something else.
I wish I'd never introduced you to these words.
They're really fun to say. But there's a guy who was Japanese who survived.
Well, he's got the most amazing story.
This is a crazy story. Masabumi Hosono, he is traveling. I guess we should probably keep our powder dry for what happens with these stories. But
this one.
So the reason he's on the Titanic is he has been in Russia scouting their railways.
So this is a period, Japan's just kind of opened up. It's been 1,000 years where it's been completely isolationist.
Japan's about to get quite juicy.
It's about to get very juicy. They're about to make up for a lot of lost time, Japan.
Yeah.
And basically, for about 50 years, Japan has this policy where they're sending out guys just to look at all the world leaders in any industry.
Yeah.
So they're looking at railways, they're looking at civil service, engineering. So they just have loads of people just basically taking notes, how the education system, and trying to basically catch up with industrialization.
And this is when they copy the whiskey industry wholesale from Scotland.
They're copying loads of stuff.
But they're copying it. They build it precisely like to an autistic level of matching the detail.
Yeah. We've got to do a story on Japan. We've got to do one about Japan.
Japanese whiskey. We should do the story of Japanese whiskey. So the Titanic is built in Belfast. Mm-hmm. It's signed off in 1911, and then there's some tests, crucially, and they test how fast it can go. 24 knots. What's that in miles? It's like still 20 miles an hour.
But yeah,
you're still if it hits a kid, the kid's probably going to live.
Yeah. If you hit me at 20,
yeah, that's what the iceberg says. If you hit me at, but it's that marginal gain thing, isn't it? So goes down to Southampton and then takes on a load of crew, a high proportion of which would have been paedophiles.
Mm-hmm. There's also quite a lot of Cornish crew, and Cornish identity is very strong, so they would have their own canteen.
Really?
So Cornish people would segregate themselves.
Hello. Hello. Fucking big ship over there. But also what's interesting is that the crew, they're kind of not all necessarily trained in their roles. A lot of them are just sort of bunged on, from Southampton. They vaguely worked in shipping, but there's 800 crew. So obviously there's an officer class, but beyond that, they're just shotgun, not boiler man. Shotgun not working.
Oh, really?
The shotgun not fit fireman.
But then the history of all these coastal cities in Britain for the last 150 years, 200, is their naval cities. Portsmouth, Southampton, Belfast, which is the industry is to do with getting on shit. It's something that I really want to talk about during the Napoleonic Wars is press ganging, which is mad. Do you know about press ganging?
No.
So press ganging is how they'd get a lot of crews, especially during the Napoleonic Wars, like Nelson's era, where they need a crew more than anything. And this would affect only really coastal cities. What would happen is ships would come into port, like Portsmouth, Hampton, then they'd go out as a gang and they would kidnap just able-bodied men on the street, and then they'd press gang them onto the ship, and then they'd be on that ship for 15 years.
Right.
So it was a real thing.
I thought it was like a paparazzi thing.
No. You would bundle someone into a sack, and then they would come up from the deck 3 days later in the middle of the Atlantic, and it's like, well, I guess I work here now.
Fuck. Would you know?
Imagine getting press ganged into your job, press ganged into marketing. You're just bundled into a sack
in front of a computer.
Well, I guess I'm a graphic designer now.
Well, that's what Swedish stag do's are. You know that Swedish stag do. The tradition is that the groom to be doesn't know the date of the stag do and is kidnapped. That's the tradition,
right?
So if you get engaged in Sweden, you are setting off a countdown to being kidnapped before your wedding. So I have a friend who's Swedish, and because he lives over here, he was going back to Sweden. Right. So he was like, I know when it's going to happen, but I know that as soon as I get off the plane, at any point I could be bundled into a van. Right.
Well, I feel that leads a lot of confusion, because some things might not have been kidnapping; they might have just been a Swedish stag do.
That's why there's no crime in Sweden.
Yeah, I was watching a recent film called September 7th. About
doesn't sound right.
What was the Munich one? The 1972 Munich Olympics where the Jewish guys were held hostage.
Yeah,
could have been a Swedish stag do.
Yes, could have been.
Do you know if they'd communicated properly?
Madeleine McCann could just be another Swedish stag. We don't know. Anyway, so that's Southampton. Loads of people go on. There are stories of firemen, which are the people that stoke the coals that run the whole ship. Mm-hmm. They go out and get battered the night before.
Right.
A couple of them come back, wake up late because there's no alarms. Yeah. And then they are like, oh, fuck. And then they sprint to... There's something about crossing a train track, and a bunch of them cross the tracks, even though there's a train coming, and a couple of them wait. And the ones that wait don't get on the Titanic because they miss the they close the gate and say it's too late.
But that's what happens in the film, right at the beginning.
They pick up some reservists.
Yeah.
And if
because they all queue and
the attitude to work at this point seems mad. It's like if you turn up, we'll get you on somehow. I guess because it's not actually
also
skilled.
A huge sign of Edwardian upper class kind of etiquette. A real sign of status is booking a ticket and not turning up.
Yes.
So a lot of first class passengers just didn't turn up. That was just like seen as a big status.
A big flex is to buy a ticket. Which is now, it's funny because you do that for an airline, it's an absolute fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
If I was to just buy a ticket for like London to New York and then not go, but that was a fucking waste of money, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't think anyone's like, what a classy gent.
The amount of emails
what a classy gent that man.
The amount of emails I'm getting from British Airways going, where are you? And would passenger Taylor please report to check-in?
What a sophisticated man that is.
That's what an absolute gent. The ship sets sail Southampton, April 10th. Charlie, when's Hitler's birthday? April 10th, 1912.
Come on.
20th of April.
April 20th.
So 5 days after she sinks, Hitler turns 23?
Okay.
1889.
Right.
Hitler
so
born.
He's just left uni and he doesn't know what he wants to do. He's he's looking at his first job.
I think he may well have been rejected from art school by this point. This is getting exciting, isn't it? Yeah, he's getting rejected from art school.
Yeah.
So, yes, Hitler...
But this is before the Hitler we know and love.
This is before he becomes the GOAT. So Hitler... What did Hitler think of the Titanic disaster? That's another episode.
There's no record of Hitler's specific thoughts. Brilliant.
There's no record of his thoughts. I'm sure he had thoughts.
He's got quite a lot of recorded thoughts.
That's Europe. So the Titanic set sail about 10 days before Hitler's 23rd birthday.
Right.
And it goes to Cherbourg to pick up some very smelly passengers, probably, from France. And then it goes to Queenstown, which is now called like Cobb or Cobb.
Yeah.
C-O-B-H, Cove.
Okay.
So it stops at Queenstown. And then it sets sail into the North Atlantic Ocean on, I don't know, fucking 12th?
Yep.
13th, something like that. A week before Hitler turns 23.
What could possibly go wrong?
There are fields of fatbergs drifting, and the Titanic is on a course.
All the guys that Judd Apatow brought up.
A collision course with destiny. Now, we're going to leave it there for this today's episode. The next episode, and quite possibly a third episode, are all on the Patreon already. For £3 a month, you can become a truther. What really happened to the Titanic? Sign up to find out, and you will discover what happened to the Titanic.
The untold story.
Untold story of all the fish that died.
The unresearched story of the Titanic. Never heard before.
New theories, groundbreaking evidence. Yeah. Anyway, that's all on the Patreon. Either way, thank you very much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.
Good night.